Hi, folks, and welcome. I'm Dan McDermott. This is the McDermott Report. We air live weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, midnight GMT. That's for Brett Herbeck, one of our guests, who frequents Europe with all of his wealth and financial security. Brett, welcome.
The planet Europe.
Wow, Brett, you have a bad phone connection. Say again?
I'm on the other side of the planet.
He's on the other side of the planet, where
Not
he
Europe.
he is preparing to award President Obama with a second Nobel Prize, but this one in economics. Also joining us, that was a dig. Also joining us is Ms. Emily Williams. I say Ms. because she is an NPR listener. Emily, welcome, as always. Good to have you aboard.
Are you profiling me based on my radio station, Dan?
Yes, ma'am.
Already.
I am typecasting, profiling, whatever you want to call it. But welcome to both of you guys. Welcome to our viewers from Huffington Post and from Justin.tv. Our chat room is functioning. If you'd like to join us, just to the right of our screen is a chat room, and I'm going to type hi. Also, you can join us by calling us. The number is 818-688-6625, and that's brought to us by Blog Talk Radio. Anyway, so welcome to both of our guests. It was an eventful day on Wall Street. Another 500 and some points down. And this is, I guess we've lost about a year of Wall Street gains. What this means to the average person is, it depends. If you were planning on retiring in a month, then you're in a panic mode. If you're retiring in 20 years or 30 years, or like Emily in about 60 years, then you really, it's a long-term thing she's worried about. She's not worried about these ups and downs. But what we're all worried about is the job market, or the lack thereof. And the jobs haven't been there. It's gotten worse and worse. I think when it first crashed, right, not because of, but coincidentally, when President Obama took over, we had the crash right before the the new term. It was about 5% or so unemployment rate, and now the official rate's 9.1, and that'll go up or down in a few days. We'll find out the numbers, but basically it's bad, and we know it's bad. Anybody, Joe Sixpack on the street knows it's bad. Warren Buffett knows it's bad. Everybody in between knows it's bad. So closer to the Warren Buffett scale, I'm going to bring our first guest, Brett Herbeck, who is the former vice mayor of Front Royal, Virginia, on again, off again, Republican politician, great guy, good friend. Brett, I was kidding earlier. This isn't a Barack Obama problem. This is a bipartisan issue, and this is a cyclical issue. But all the Republican candidates are going to be talking about this. What are your thoughts today? Brett's never at a loss for words. We must have. Oh, here. Let me bring it back. Oh, he left and came back. Brett, welcome back.
Thank you. And dropped off. Sorry about that.
I'm not sure what you got and what you didn't get, but basically, I'm just curious as a business person, as someone who watches politics, and so what are your thoughts today? A lot of people are in a panic. A lot of people are worried about what's going on. What make us feel better, Brett? You can do this.
Well, I'm not quite as pessimistic as you might be, Dan. I'm more optimistic about the American people and what we're made of, and the resolve that we're made up of, and we'll pull ourselves out up from our bootstraps and pull ourselves out of this. Of course, the first thing I think we have to do is get through next November and replace the economist in chief here, who has better.
Brett, we're having maybe we should talk about the FCC or something, because you're having some telephone difficulties. Maybe we can get one of the commissioners on the program. Go ahead. You want to try it again? All right.
The Obama administration is censoring him.
I think so. It's the administration. Okay. While Brett finds a window to stand next to, Emily, what do you think? How do you feel about the economy today?
Well, it was obvious that the little rebound that we had yesterday was too good to be true. But I'm still not ready to get depressed about this yet. And granted, your point that you made in the beginning is completely correct. All of my investing is very long term at this point, and I'm really not too concerned in the short term about it. we've left most of our stuff where it is, and have faith that the economy will rebound before I'm 60 or 70 or whatever age journalists are retiring at now. But yeah, it's bad right now, but it's all based on these knee-jerk reactions based on the debt ceiling talks. So hopefully people, the economy, as a whole, the American people aren't going to go into buying gold and not shopping anymore mode, and this won't continue. But fingers crossed that this is a short-term thing.
I think so. I hope so. Actually, I don't think so. I think we're to a degree we're on a house of cards, if you will, credit cards, but we've been through a lot. Brett's back, hopefully. We've been through a lot. My parents lived in New England, or my dad lived in Worcester, Massachusetts. My mom was in North Carolina. I remember my dad had to. They remember when they were kids, they had to black out their windows because we feared a bombing raid. We've been through Pearl Harbor. We've been through a civil war. We've been through the Great Depression in the 1930s. We've been through 9/11. We've been through a lot of things. So, by comparison to those things, we're not under. I mean, the Emperor of Japan is not bombing Pearl Harbor. We've been through bad stuff before. And so we have to put things in perspective. We've been through downturns, 1987 and the 08. But Brett, you wanted to console us a bit.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm out here in Hawaii right now, and there's a full resort. These people obviously are feeling the effects somewhat, but people are still spending money, and I think that there's still just an optimism in what the American future holds. We're the leader in creation and creativity and hard work and ingenuity, and I still believe that that's just what comes with American character. I think that we need to definitely have a change in policy and direction from Washington, D.C. They need to lead by example, but I think that we're just going to get through this economy. We're still not, quote, in a recession, but a positive GDP growth of 1 and a negative GDP growth of 1 it isn't really relevant to people. So whether we're technically in a recession or not is irrelevant. But I think that it's hard times, but we'll bounce back just like we always have.
The great optimist. How nice. I hope you're right, Brett. I really do. I think that we have not bottomed. I think that the housing market. I mean, there's so many factors. The housing market is basically still overpriced. If you look at the chart where it should be, and we're kind of delaying the inevitable, as bad as that is. I still think the stocks, even today, are, if you look at historic trends from the beginning, I wrote a thing that should the Dow be at 3,000 in 08, and some economists arguing back and forth in the comment section is really interesting. But if you look at the chart, it just ballooned in the 90s, and we had a bubble. And as Isaac Newton said, what goes up must come down. So I hope you're right. But I don't see. The Dow is largely reacting, right? It's not the creator of wealth, except for stockbrokers, et cetera. It's for folks who invest and make money. But really, they're making money because the stock market represents the growth in America. 70% of our economy is consumers, and they're not buying right now. I see that in my business. I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I hope your optimism is well placed, and I'm sure that it's easy to be optimistic when you're in Honolulu. I can't imagine what the weather's like. What are you doing? Are you business or pleasure? I guess obviously some pleasures is what?
This is technically vacation.
Technically, okay, except for your talk show duties. Okay, well, I'm glad you're toughing it out in Hawaii for us. But anyway, okay. So another state that's fun to visit and fun to live in is Texas. So Rick Perry is, I've been convinced, although others have disagreed with me, I'm really not impressed with the field of Republican candidates. I don't think any of them, at this point, I'm not convinced. It's still early. I'm not convinced that any of them could beat President Obama. So they're just not interesting. I mean, Donald Trump keeps going in and out. He's not a serious candidate, but he's great television. I think it'd be terrific if he got back in. I love Ron Paul, but I don't think any of these guys could win in November. And then the governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie's, people have flirted with him, but he keeps, he's done all but hang himself on national television to prove that he's not going to run. But Rick Perry's an interesting guy. He's had a few missteps along the way. He declared that Texas could secede from the Union, but really he just got a little confused on the facts. When Texas joined the Union, they were the independent country, the Republic of Texas, and the deal was when they came in, they were allowed to, under certain conditions, they could split into different states. So they could become, instead of one state of Texas, they could become a few different states. So he got a little confused there, but he's an interesting guy, and the economy in Texas is doing very well. Just like sometimes we have Daniel Bowie on. He's an investment guy. He's an angel investor in Vancouver, British Columbia, good buddy of mine in the program, and their economy's great. Their jobs, their market's lower, and so what do you think, Emily? Is Rick Perry the answer to the Republicans' problems, if they have any?
I think he might be. I really was not very familiar with him until I started reading up on him today. And from what I've read, really he has a lot of strong points going from him, and he has the capability to steal a lot of votes away from existing Republican candidates. So, it looks like once he enters, which he probably will, he's going to be a strong candidate. The one thing that's really going against him is that he's never run for anything outside of the state of Texas. But then again, Sarah Palin did quite well until she, messed up towards the end. So it's obvious that the American people are okay with someone who's, based in one state. So we'll see.
Brett Herbeck, what do you think? Is Rick Perry? Are you still a strong Romney guy? I don't know if you ever were. I'm just kidding.
I think that the premise of your question, I don't agree with it, that we have a weak Republican field. I think the Republican field is strong, and I'm relatively confident that President Obama is beatable at this point by almost any of them, just by looking at remembering that we are elect our presidents to the Electoral College and not through popular vote. I just don't see some of the states that win for Obama going for last time going for Obama this time, Indiana, Virginia, North Carolina, etc. And I think we're going to come down to some of the key battleground states that we saw in 2000 and 2004. So I don't think that Rick Perry is the answer to any Republican problem, because I just don't really think there is a Republican problem. I'm not the biggest fan of his, but I would, at this point, take just about anybody who didn't have the last name Obama as our president, and that would even include Hillary Clinton at this point. So that's how I feel about the thing. I think we have some really great candidates on the Republican side, and if I had to really put it out there and predict, I would just suggest that Republicans are going to fall in line and do what we traditionally do, and that's elect the next person in line, and that's Mitt Romney. And depending on who he picks as his running mate, will be the person that, if he can really solidify the conservative grassroots. If he picked a Michelle Bachmann or something like that as his running mate. He's not my candidate right now, but I think that's probably who's going to end up on top.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I think he'll be a really interesting candidate in the same way that Chris Christie was. And he has some gaffes. So Joe Biden has gaffes, but I like Joe Biden. I mean, I don't know, on policy he's great, but I just think he's a fun, cool vice president. He's a little arrogant and he makes mistakes all the time, but he's, that's what he is. Take him as he is. So yeah, I think I hear what you're saying, and what I'm saying is I'm not excited about the prospects of any of this field emerging in November as a victor, but it's still very early in the process. And really, for Barack Obama, it wasn't until Iowa when people, when most Americans said, "Wow, this guy really has a shot at winning." And so it's still very early. So we shall see. Let's go to I'm sorry. Go ahead, Brett.
Well, I think it's going to be very interesting to see if it's not Mitt Romney as the nominee for the Republicans, and it's somebody like Michelle Bachmann. I mean, maybe the grassroots will turn out for her. She'll do really well in Iowa, New Hampshire, and springboard forward. To really see her go up against, or somebody like her go up against Obama, because in a debate he's never been challenged. McCain was not the candidate to challenge Obama and fluster him and put him off his game. I mean, McCain was willing to just take the gloves off and really be nice about it. And I think Bachmann or somebody in that line would really challenge him and call Obama out on some of the things that he's said that are misleading and frankly outright lies. So it would be very interesting debate to see those two, or him and somebody else like Michelle Bachmann, go at it, because I think we'd really see the teleprompter in chief, so to speak, really be off his game.
The teleprompter, whatever. Everyone uses a teleprompter. I use them sometimes, but obviously not tonight. That's why I'm making all these mistakes. I think Brett just got another dig in, but we didn't hear it, so I was spared. Okay, let's go to a disturbing topic, even perhaps more disturbing than the economy. Warren Jeffs, imprisoned leader of the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is a breakaway sect, apparently very old. When Utah entered the statehood, one of the conditions was that they had to give up polygamy, because Utah was a heavily Mormon state, and the Mormons believed in having more than one wife. And when Utah was admitted into the Union, they banned polygamy as a condition. Now, this sect, the Mormon Church, officially called the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and a lot of politicians. I think Mitt Romney's a Mormon, Orrin Hatch is a Mormon, but there's this other sect, and this group still practices polygamy, but they the leader apparently was had, I think, 70 some wives, and he was convicted on 2 counts of I guess abuse of these children, because some of them were underage. Of the 76, I think a majority were underage, and the 2 kids in question one was 12 and one was 15 or 16, and he was sentenced to life in prison. This isn't just about multiple wives, but I think that it's hard to, with the freedom of religion in the United States. It's kind of hard if someone truly believes, and that's the religion, and it's centuries old tradition. It's hard not to say that they have a case for that if it's all consensual adults. And they weren't legally married. I think he had 1 wife maybe, but the rest were spiritual wives. What are your thoughts? I went to Emily last. Brett, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
I don't know if what is allowed, what is marriage.
Brett, we can't hear. Let me get Emily while Brett resituates. Apparently the waves are crashing on the telephone poles. Emily, what do you think?
Hawaii is just too far away, apparently. Yeah, well, it really, and I've said this before on the show, it really just comes down to the fact that he was, violating United States law, period. And, freedom of religion does not protect people who, statutorily rape young women, or, if your religion was to, for example, sacrifice people or what have you, you're not protected under, it doesn't work like that. So, it's really nice to see that the court system, came through, especially after all of the ludicrous things that went on in the courtroom from the reporting, that he is going to be in jail for a long period of time. And, hopefully he won't get an illegal Facebook page and start contacting his, child lives. But that's a story we're going to talk about later.
All right, Brett, have you crawled out on the ledge or something? And I don't mean because, I don't mean because you own stocks. I mean, to get a better phone signal.
I'm standing on one leg right now with my arm out.
See, this is a bad sign. This is an omen of sorts. I can't hear anything he's saying. This is great. We can just talk about Brett now, and I can insult him, and he cannot. Are you there, Brett? Wonder if there's a landline. Maybe you could, if you can hear me, Brett. If we can't get this working, what we can do is you can call my cell phone, and I can patch you in. Emily won't be able to hear you, but you can hear me, and you can hear Emily. I don't know. We could try that, but. All right, so Brett is against the whole polygamy thing. I'm just going to speak for him on that. I'm gonna skip a topic while we're waiting for Brett to try to get back in. The mobile diet app plan. This is a story. I don't know if it's Reuters or AP, but the whole concept of Lite apps, next step in preventing a bandwidth drought. And the issue is there is a limited amount. Brett, are you there?
If you can hear me, I'm here.
I hear you very well. Before we get to the app thing, you want to give me your thoughts on Warren Jeffs? You're against polygamy, I assume.
Brett Herbeck is against statutory rape and polygamy. I think he has summed it up pretty well.
Okay. Emily, Emily, you want to be the devil's advocate here? No, I'm just kidding. Emily, you got any thoughts on Warren Jeffs?
No, just what I said before.
All right. I'm confused.
I think we all agree on that one.
All right. This next thing, they're talking about a Lite app. The whole concept here is there's a bandwidth crunch, right? And I think Netflix is sometimes like 60% of the bandwidth during prime time hours. And then everyone's going mobile. Like I just got my new Android phone, and it's really cool. I can do a whole lot more. My BlackBerry was like a calculator to this Cray supercomputer. I love it, but it does suck up more bandwidth. There's a limited amount of frequency of spectrum available. A lot of it's used by public safety, by television and radio broadcasts, including public radio, which is heavily supported by Emily, who joins me not being in Hawaii. But it's interesting, this concept. Instead of trying to instead of improving the networks or technology or what have you, or we're just going to say let's dumb down the apps so you can't do as much. This seems a little regressive. What do you think, Emily?
Sort of, but at the same time, I think that we talked before about this bandwidth thing, and it's a problem that doesn't have an immediate solution. So I think it's a good thing to do in the meantime. And when I first read this, the interesting thing that struck me is that it seems as though it used to be that taking up more bandwidth with really heavy apps was in mobile carriers' favors because it meant that people were paying more for what they were doing. And it's interesting now that it's so important that bandwidth is getting used up that they have to go to Lite apps. I think it's a sign that it's obviously an immediate problem.
I think so. And Brett, what do you? It seems to me that one good thing about this problem is that there's good competition with cable TV and internet. For good internet, you basically get cable if you can. If you're in outside the cable area, then you could try satellite or DSL if you're lucky to be close to the head end. And then if you're out in the boonies, you're on dial-up and you're basically shut off from the world. But in mobile, there are like you're in Front Royal or now in Honolulu. I'm not sure what I don't know if anyone even needs a phone there. They just go outside and just collapse in a frenzy of delight at the weather. But in Front Royal, there's Verizon, there's Sprint, and AT&T, etc. All over the place, and these pay in advance things. That's a good thing. What do you think? Is this the answer? Should we just dumb down the apps? So that people aren't using as much bandwidth, or should we look for some other solution?
Well, I think you're going to find that the marketplace is going to solve this problem. We'll find another solution for it. It was my understanding, though, that when we were going digital on TV, that bandwidth there was going to be open for cellular traffic. Is that area where TV was selling? That's because of all the apps.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. You're breaking up again. That is correct. What they're doing is they're fighting back and forth on this, but they're going to free up some bandwidth. They're going to ask stations to voluntarily give up their signal, and if they agree to do that, they're going to have an auction and let different wireless companies bid on that spectrum, like T-Mobile, AT&T Wireless, Sprint, and then the money, I think, will go to the TV station, I guess, or a big cut of it. And the thing is, though, these TV stations that broadcast, when they went to digital, they were using up, you had channel 4 or channel 5, 7, 9, whatever. And then when they went digital for high definition, they got X amount of bandwidth, enough to put a super big high definition signal, or they could go to a slightly less quality signal, and then they could have some sub channels. So that's what you see. You see most of them have their high def channel, and then 3 sub channels. One has their standard def channel, and then there's a couple side channels. It might be a weather thing, or a home shopping something, or one of these lower tier network type things. But really, that's interesting in that how long do we need broadcast television? Or is that because that takes up a whole lot? It's as much as people complain about how much Netflix takes up, broadcast takes up a lot more. Except broadcast, you're sending it out everywhere at once, whereas Netflix, it's going to each person individually. It's a different thing. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, and they are going to do that. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, let's go from that fun topic to there was a story in the news recently about a new test that will tell you the gender of your unborn child at a 6 week or 7 weeks. I think it will tell you, do you have a boy or a girl? And is this just no big deal, Emily, or do you think this is perhaps a cause for concern? One of my concerns is I guess basically, I mean, encouraging folks to, if they want a boy or a girl and this is the wrong gender, abort it and then go back. I don't know. What do you think? Does this matter? Is this a non-story?
Well, I think for the United States, this is a non-story. In the article, they actually mentioned that blood tests similar to this have been banned in India, in particular, because they were being used to determine the sex of a child. And, the reason that it's such a big deal whether or not you have a boy or a girl there is because if you have a girl, you have a substantial financial burden in trying to find her a husband and then paying for that whole process. So I think when you get down to comparing the United States and India and whether or not if this test was widely available in the United States, women would start aborting babies left and right based on their gender. I think it's just, I don't think you can compare the two situations at all. I don't think that you can point to India and say this is going to happen here now. I mean, we have nowhere near the financial or overpopulation problems that they have, and we don't have the traditional marriage customs like they have either. So it's right now. I think that for us, it's a non-issue. I think on the larger scale, globally, there are other nations that are obviously going to have to make some decisions based on this technology. But for us, I really don't think it's going to be a problem.
Brett, what do you think? My first thought is this will be real popular in China, where they have the one-child policy. And I guess with this test, folks will just be able to breed all males and sort of adopt the opposite of the Jurassic Park approach to solving their population crisis. What do you think?
Well, like any tool, I don't think the tool is good or evil. The test isn't bad or good. It's a question of how we implement that tool. In China, you're exactly right. We already know that they abort female babies when they find out that they're female. We already know they do have infanticide to get rid of the female because of the same burdens that we just discussed in India. I don't necessarily know that's going to see widespread going on here in the United States. And I think it's a separate issue than abortion, period. This is a tool that will help help families plan, but it could also be, using the negative, it's a question of should we have abortions legal in the United States? I think that's where you draw the line. Is it a life? Is it not a life? So I think you can be pro-life and still be okay with having this kind of test. It's just a matter of what we do with that information is where I think the problem comes in. We also just saw, and why I don't think it's not a problem here in the United States is the New York Times Magazine just ran a story about a woman who was taking fertility pills for 6 months, for 6 years, and finally was able to get pregnant again, and ended up having pregnant with twins, and ended up aborting one of them because she couldn't handle that burden of having two. So here she's playing God by having more children, and then playing God by eliminating the children that she doesn't want to have. And this is the kind of scary science fiction, Brave New World eugenics type of things that we're getting involved with, and it's the application of the tools, not the tools themselves.
Okay. All right. Having solved that issue, I'm just going to move on here. Let's go back to a fun topic. Okay, they did a list. I guess this was this Forbes that they rated the top 10. Emily, was it Forbes magazine that put this out? Who did this? The top 10.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they rated the top rap artists, and I think the top 3 were Jay-Z and Kanye West, and the third was Jay-Z was number 1, richest rap mogul. Number 2 was I'm not sure what his current name is, but Puff Daddy, Sean Combs, Diddy, P. Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs. It was number 2, and then Kanye West of what award show was it when he embarrassed himself? But Brett, what do you think? How many of these guys are on your iPod? Are you still stuck on Public Enemy and NWA?
I'm more like Jack Johnson and Jason Mraz, unfortunately. So, but
why do Emily and I believe that?
I've got a little Debbie Boone going on there too. So
you light of my life, Brett.
That's right. I mean, I don't have a problem with them making the money. They're selling a product that people want. I think it might be a little, they're representative of the culture, and that might be a whole other story that we could talk with Bill Bennett and those kind of folks about. My biggest issue, my biggest beef with the folks that are super wealthy, make this kind of money, is then they turn around and the kind of public policy they support, either through their donations or through their support, and it's typically let's tax the wealthy, tax the rich, but don't touch my stuff. And that's where I have the hypocrisy is what I have a problem with. Let them make their money. I'm glad they're doing it. They're selling a product that people want. The marketplace is happy to accept them, and good for them. And hopefully they're going to put it away appropriately, because at one point they won't be favorites anymore. Just ask MC Hammer.
Brett, you still have some MC Hammer pants in your closet. Emily, what do you think? These guys are all talented, right? I mean, they deserve this money. They're all good. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it should be mentioned that this money is not only from their music. Every single one of these people on this list have side ventures that they work either producing music or clothing or what have you. And I think it's great to see musicians that would have once peaked in their fame and then disappeared, actually having money sense and business sense and going on to do other things. I mean, another good example in popular music is Justin Timberlake and everything he's done, whereas the rest of the members of NSYNC have floated off into nothingness. No offense to them. But yeah, I don't know. I like Jay-Z. I've got the Black Album. I'll own up to it. I'm a young white girl. I listen to his music. But
I like that. I got 99 Problems, and these guys are good. And even Kanye, he's kind of a jerk. He actually had a conversation or a message back and forth about some woman who complained to me about him, and he went back, and it was hysterical. But that was a number of years ago, and I've never met Jay-Z, and I saw Sean Diddy Combs at the Concert for America shortly after 9/11. They had a concert from New York City, and then the next night they went and did a concert at RFK Stadium. Diddy came out, he brought a church choir, and he did that song. He's about Notorious B.I.G. and they brought the church choir doing the remake of the Police song, Every Breath You Take. It was just fantastic. I mean, he really came, just so much energy. These guys are really good. They're talented, and you're right. It's they're smart. They're like Jimmy Dean, the Sausage King. You know, he had his hit song when he was in the 50s, 40s, 50s. You know, Big John, and had a few other hits, and then he raised pigs, and he didn't lend his name to Jimmy Dean Sausage. You know, he wasn't a licensing deal. I mean, he had pigs. He had farm-made sausage and pushed it. You know, I'm Jimmy Dean. And a buddy of mine, a senator here in Lynchburg, Steve Newman, he got a phone call from Jimmy Dean once. Steve introduced a bill to make a song that a lot of folks felt was racist, Carry Me Back to Old Virginia, the state song Emeritus, and create a new state song. And he got a phone call. Steve didn't believe it at first. He said, hello. He said, hi, this is Jimmy Dean. And Steve's like, yeah, right, who is this? You know, probably thought it was me or something, making fun of it. But yeah, he went to his house. He was great. But this is a guy, these guys are following that tradition. You know, they're diversifying, and good for them. That's what America's about. And this is still a land where you do have limitless possibility despite these ups and downs, and we're in the latter, unfortunately, right now. All right, Emily, did you? I didn't catch the whole thing about. Apparently, scorpions are biting folks in Nevada. I think about 10,000 in Nevada, and then about 60,000 or 100,000 in Mexico. But unlike the movies, I guess it doesn't kill you, but some are dangerous. And there's a new serum that's a good thing, and there's a bunch of different species, and about 50 of them are dangerous. What do you think? You ever seen a scorpion?
No, but you know, Virginia is the farthest south I've ever lived, so that's really not that surprising. we don't have scorpions up in Maine, contrary to popular belief.
Brett, Emily is a Yankee, and but if anything could bring out the redneck in her, it'd probably be a scorpion. Have you ever seen one? Are there any in Hawaii? Have we lost Brett?
I think he got caught by a scorpion, maybe.
Well, I don't know. So I guess we could talk about Brett again. Brett is strongly in support of scorpions and against scorpion venom. Are you there, Brett?
I'm here.
What do you think? Do you live in fear of scorpions when you're down in that the bowels of the world in Honolulu, Hawaii?
No, I'm not afraid of scorpions unless they get poisoned with Medusa's blood and become really large, like in the movie Clash of the Titans. Those kind of scorpions would be ones that would make me run for the hills. But that's about it.
The best thing about Emily and Brett is that there's no bandwidth issues with them because their Netflix lists there's absolutely no overlap in their taste for entertainment. All right, that was just a fun.
I've seen Clash of the Titans. Come on, give me some credit. I've seen Clash of the Titans.
Probably were you watching it for the buff guys or for the plot line?
I think for the laughs.
All right. So, okay, this was interesting. I've used the phrase somewhat flippantly discussing Google Plus on our Friday show, Google Plus Week, which is coming up this Friday. But I've discussed, I've used the phrase overthrow Egypt. You know, that when Twitter was founded, they didn't anticipate it being used, nor did Mark Zuckerberg anticipate his service being used to help overthrow Egypt or overthrow Tunisia. And in this case, it's having the opposite effect, especially with BlackBerry Messenger, which among a lot of young people, they love it because young people are on a budget, and a lot of them like to get a BlackBerry because with BlackBerry Messenger, for those of you who don't have a BlackBerry or haven't in the past, it's very similar to text messaging, except it's free. And it doesn't have the 160 character limit. It's a lot faster. It's superior. It's similar to Google Talk on your cell phone. But this is interesting. And BlackBerry has said they'll help, but they're not going to shut the network down. because a lot of folks use it. You know, medical personnel might use it. I mean, and it's you don't shut the whole phone system down because a few people are planning hooliganism with the phones. This is a whole interesting thing. Did you guys, Emily, did you see this coming? I guess it makes sense, right?
You know, it does, because it's essentially, you know, it's the same thing. People are using social networking to, you know, quickly put out messages to gather in places, and, you know, it can either be used for good or it can be used for bad. I mean, it was something that was inevitable, I think. And, you know, on top of what's going on in the UK, I wanted to add that, you know, there are people in the States that are using this for evil as well. I hate to use that phrase, but yeah, it's actually if you're familiar with the term flash mob, which was, you know, a bunch of people gathering in a public place and doing a dance or something like that. The new thing, which you know, and it's for the most part it's youth that are doing it, is flash mobbing, where a message will go out on Twitter or Facebook, and people will, you know, gather in a store and just rob it all at the same time. And, you know, they're saying that most of the people that are participating in this are, you know, young adults that are unemployed or underemployed, and that for the most part it's young African-American males, which the article that I read made sure to point out that, and I think this is a pertinent point, that they're also they're the group that's been affected the most by the recession and the lack of jobs. So, you know, I really think that this whole issue probably comes down to, you know, and it's so much the same reason people were revolting in Egypt. It's unsatisfied youth. And, you know, instead of gathering in the streets and getting angry about it, people in the States for some reason are robbing stores. So I think it's, you know, it's probably one of those one of the only signs of the times that I've seen recently that really got me worried. when social media gets used for the bad. But.
Brett, this is a whole new thing. We've come a long way from a 3-day trip to get news from Europe to the new world. I guess this is just a sign of the times, and I'm sure that social media and the access to it, especially by young people who are, you know, typically the first adopters of these sorts of things, it's created a whole new. It's great in some ways, and it's a whole new concern because we all saw the headline on Drudge today. Riots erupt around the world due to, you know, ostensibly due to economic fears. What do you think?
Well, my grandfather used to tell me that one generation will fix the problem, but all it does is create another problem for the new generation. I think this is another example. Every progression in technology is solving an issue. We're able to relay information faster. We're able to overthrow totalitarian regimes with our social media, but it can also it creates a problem for law enforcement on the other side. So I think that every technology is a double-edged sword that way. Every time we move forward with progress, we fix problems and we create new ones, and that's just what we had right here. And I'm sure that the law will eventually catch up with it, and law enforcement will catch up with it, and we'll figure out a way to protect people's civil liberties as well as curtail crime.
So we all agree that you should not use Twitter, Facebook, and other social media to have riots unless you're overthrowing Egypt. All right. I guess sort of on what do you all think about this Verizon strike? This is another sad story of folks who are, I mean, they feel threatened, and they are threatened because they're the linemen. You know, they're the guys running the copper wire. It's called a POTS line, which stands for plain old telephone system. It's largely unchanged for a century, like the internal combustion engine, and it's being supplanted by the guys who are installing the computer stuff, running fiber, that sort of thing. They feel threatened, and I think tens of thousands of them are on strike, and it's getting pretty ugly. We haven't had sort of a messy strike in a while that's affected the Northern Virginia, D.C. area before, but it's happening all over the country. Emily, what do you think?
You know, this really, it's the whole issue it's just a shame, and it really points to how unhappy, you know, the entire everyone involved in the job market is right now. The statements that came from Verizon all really just point to the fact that they can't be expected to pay and to provide benefits at the same level that they did when they were doing much better with the service that these employees were working on. Financially back when they had more of a majority, I guess. And it's really, I'm not familiar with Verizon's bottom line. I'm not going to pretend to be, but it's really a shame when, when jobs are lost and people lose benefits because of, Verizon's a huge company. And I'd be surprised if they weren't able to pay these people, a little bit more, or to give them health insurance like they want, or, I'm really not sure what exactly the benefits they're asking for. But, we actually, Lynchburg might be directly affected by this because we're undergoing a road project that involves Verizon moving lines. And, our planners are having to put in time that might go in as a result of this strike. So it affects a lot of people, and not just, folks wanting to hook up a landline to their house. So, hopefully it will resolve itself. But, there's a lot of really unhappy workers all across every job in America right now. And, there's a lot of unhappy people who would gladly take their jobs, too, because they're unemployed. It's a sad situation.
Brett, I beat up on Sprint all the time because of their horrible record of customer service. It's at the upper levels, it's really awful company. But this is Verizon, a competitor, and I think this is. I think the company said, all these companies were monopolies, right? In Front Royal, Sprint was the local telco. I guess they bought Centel, Central Telephone Company, and then it was Sprint. And then when Sprint went with wireless, they spun off. I think they were forced to. And then now Sprint is wireless, and now it was Embark, and now it's CenturyLink. They keep changing the name, but it's the same workers you see. This is, I think the company said that some of the higher level line guys working in, laying copper and running that were making $97,000 plus $50,000 in benefits. And those strike me as wages more in line with what a monopoly company could charge, and they're no longer a monopoly. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that if there's a contract and obligation that's owed to their workers that the company promised, they obviously should be fulfilling that. However, this is one of the issues I have with unions is that they're willing to cut up their nose to spite their face in this. If they don't take a pay cut, or if they don't give up some of the benefits, it could very well put the company out of business, and then they're left with nothing. And I don't think that the union leadership really looks beyond immediately passing out the goodies to keep their power base, just like we talk about in Washington. I think it was American Airlines or TWA, one of these airlines, that the pilots union would refuse to take a cut in their pension. What ultimately happened is the airline went bankrupt, wiped everything out, and now those pilots have nothing through the bankruptcy settlement. So I think what they need to look at is what's being argued. The company cannot sustain these kind of benefits or cannot sustain these kind of salaries because of the way that the economy has changed, because the marketplace has changed, because that good or service is no longer is high demand. And if they want to keep their jobs, or if they want to have any solvency for the company at all, there has to be some changes, and everybody's going to have to take some kind of hit. Companies have to change, and workers have to be able to change and be willing to get re-educated and pick up new skills. Otherwise, they're just going to be left behind. And that's the nature of progress. And I'd hate to sit still and have the same technology we had 10 years ago, much less 50 years ago. And unions and labor and management, they all have to understand that. Otherwise, their company becomes obsolete and they're all out of work.
Yeah, my mom told me a story when she was when she was a younger worker. I don't know if she was sewing or doing clerical work, but it was sort of an entry-level job. She was in her 20s, and someone had talked about starting a union there. And this, the boss just came down one day. He said, I own this company. He said, I could retire right now, and I'm financially well off. I think I treat all of you well. If you start a union, I will shut the business down and close it, and you'll all be out of work. I don't need this. And the union vote was negative, obviously, either because they were afraid or because the guy was telling the truth. But in Wisconsin, they had this big fight over Governor Scott Walker's move to over the private sector unions, basically taking away some of their rights. And I think even FDR, who was definitely not anti-union and no right-winger, was very nervous about public sector unions. And you see this if you've seen that TV show Waiting for Superman, or the movie Waiting for Superman. You see, I think it was in D.C., where she showed a list of all the forms she had to fill out to fire a teacher. And in some states, I think after a year or two, they get tenure where they basically can't be fired unless they commit some huge thing. And the principals don't really have any power. And we wonder why the public schools are in some cases are not doing a great job. Although there's some terrific ones and some terrific teachers in all of them. But I just in Wisconsin, there's this big fight, and I'm not sure if either of you guys. What's the latest on this? I guess there are recall elections against some of the Republican senators, and I think there was one crucial race. Brett, I know there's nothing to do in Honolulu. Are you following this closely from your tropical paradise?
It looks like that almost all of the Republicans were were not recalled. I think one of them was. One Democrat did beat them, and I think there was still one, if I understand. So there could be some interesting parliamentary procedure going on that if things shake out the way some observers think, there might be 1 week where the lame duck legislature would still be heavily Republican and be able to do some stuff. But I think overall, at least this is the Republican National Committee's spin on it, is that for the most part, the Republicans who stood strong against the employee unions and trying to get the Wisconsin budget and the fiscal order were protected. And even though it was unpopular with the public, the voters came out and supported the decision of their leadership in the assembly. So. That's kind of my take on it. Maybe there's something different going on. Wisconsin politics is not my specialty, and especially going on right now, I barely know what's going on in the stock market, much less that.
Yeah, I guess there's other fish to fry, literally, in Hawaii. Emily, what do you think? This was a bad time for the public sector unions when the economy is in a downturn and everyone's talking about cutting public spending. And this is the time that they're trying to wage a fight to protect public spending, and some of them receive wages and benefits that far exceed those of the taxpayers who support them. What do you think? This is not a good time for them, and nor has it been a victorious season?
Yeah, I think it's important to mention here, and this is, that there are a lot of public unions that are doing bad things, and of course they're being called out now. And you can compare, if you want a perfect example, the bad things that public unions can do. You just look to Greece and look at all the problems they're having financially. But it should also be mentioned that there are a lot of public employees that are seeing massive cuts right now, and wage freezes, and a number of really horrible things, teachers included. And that while there are some parts of the country and some states that do have problems with, too many rights, but there are other areas. I mean, our Virginia in particular is seeing, a lot of trouble with teacher salaries getting hard hit because of localities having smaller budgets, and it's a bigger issue, I think, and I think you have to look at both sides. I think that a lot of attention has been paid to Wisconsin, of course, since the whole almost some debauchery made of their government up there, but it should be mentioned that there are other public employees throughout the nation that, are not seeing absorbent salaries and benefits and what have you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's not a great day to trying to be for their position. I would point out one thing. As much as I agree with Scott Walker's stance to a large degree, it was very hypocritical for him to pick on certain unions but then exempt the public safety unions because they all vote Republican. That's straight up political corruption, in my opinion. He should have, it just weakened his whole argument. Okay, the super Emily, you want to talk to this the Republican tax hardliner, the super panel that's going to solve all of our economic woes?
Yeah, I think that we've found out so far, and this is the super committee that was agreed upon as part of the it's a deficit reduction committee, and it was agreed upon as part of the debt ceiling bills that went through. And the six Republican members have been named, and I believe that 3 on the Democrat side have been named, and the 3 from the House still haven't. The 3 from the Senate have been. But really what people are talking about is that this, if anything is going to get done on this committee, it's really going to come down to like one vote on either side moving over. So the outlook for it being a productive committee is already pretty bleak. And it should be mentioned that when S&P downgraded us when we went from AAA to AA, the reason that they pointed to was specifically political. They said that they didn't believe that the super committee would be able to come to any decisions that would benefit the nation, and that, they had lost faith in our government being able to make healthy financial decisions. And, that was really shocking to a lot of people because it was such a political statement. This super committee really would be an opportunity for us to prove them wrong, and folks are already doubting that will happen. So, fingers crossed that there will be some good discussion and, good bipartisan effort to actually do something good for our economy. But, if it's going to come down to one vote, it's obviously going to be messy politics.
Brett, I was listening to a bunch of different things today, and on CNN, I think we've just lost Brett, which means he can't hear what I'm saying, and I'm asking him a question, which I'm not really doing because he can't hear me. So he's going to call back from Hawaii. I guess it must be stormy, awful weather there as usual, and it's affecting his cell phone coverage. While we wait for Brett, I guess the next topic is going to be Facebook is closing U.S. prison inmate accounts. I didn't know they could have Facebook. What's the deal with that, Emily?
So apparently this is a state-by-state thing, and some states allow it and some states don't. California prisons it's not legal in California for a prison inmate to maintain a Facebook account. And there have been, this story is just, it's horrible. And, not to rag on social networking, because I feel like we're just bringing it right down tonight, but I guess this is just reality. Numerous inmates have apparently gained access to Facebook pages, not through regular internet. They don't have access to internet in jail, but through smuggled cell phones. And apparently one case in particular that they mentioned was a child molester who was gotten pictures of a girl that he had molested when she was 12 and she's now 18, and was sending her family sketched pictures of her based on her photos on Facebook. And, they've apparently had hundreds of complaints about, inmates contacting their victims, and it's really messy. And, of course, Facebook and MySpace, I think both, have agreed to take down the accounts of people that are abusing them. They did say that if the accounts were made before the person was put into prison and that they hadn't accessed it at all while they were in prison, that they would remain But anyone who's in violation of the law, they delete their accounts. So it's scary stuff, and it's another really dark shadow on social networking.
Brett, you're back, right?
I'm back here.
Okay, Brett, here's the deal. Jumping back to the previous topic before we lose you again, we're almost done now. But I was listening to so many commentators, and they're saying that until we finally admit we have to raise taxes and cut spending, blah blah blah. I don't think this is a time to raise taxes. As I've said before, I think that if you taxed everybody at 1%, then the government couldn't exist. If you taxed everyone at 99%, then nobody would work, because what's the point? I'm not sure where that line is. And I know now that among the richer Americans, the taxes are lower than they've been in 50 years since the Bush tax cuts came in. But I don't think you should raise anybody's taxes right now. And I think that I'm not sure where the magic number is. But Rush Limbaugh was talking about something a few days ago. I heard him mention this statistic that was really interesting to me. If you took everybody who made $10 million or more a year, everybody, Jay-Z, and these guys, entertainers, Oprah, everybody who makes $10 million or more, all the way up to Warren Buffett, and you took all of their income, you taxed them 100%. You basically took all of their income away. Remember, it's income tax. It's not wealth tax. Like, you have $1 billion in the bank, you pay tax when you earn it, and it sits there and you don't pay any more tax except on any earnings from it. If you took all of their money, it would amount to $240 billion a year. That's not a lot of money. I mean, that's nothing compared to our federal issues. So this is about spending. This is about things like increasing the retirement age for Social Security, looking at Medicare benefits, all these sorts of things that are anathema politically. And the way our system is, which is the best of all of the other corrupt systems, the least bad corrupt system, I guess, depending on your perspective. But really, this is about politicians being expected to vote for things that are going to rile up special interest groups that are going to oppose them. I mean, how can any of these guys actually get anything done? What's the solution to this?
Well, I think that comprehensive tax reform is what they need to be focusing on, and I think that is doable. Charles Krauthammer, I think, makes a really good argument about that comprehensive tax reform is something that should be agreeable to both sides. First of all, I think it's interesting. I'm surprised to find liberal bias in the headline of the Reuters article about how it's Republican hardliners are put on the committee, nothing to mention that Max Baucus or Senator Patty Murray or John Kerry or the Democrat senators on the committee, who are obviously hardline liberals. But
I'm going to cut in real quick, because I think that having read the entire article, the article is specifically about the announcements about the Republicans made today.
Okay.
So they probably had like a Democrat hardliners on super panel when that announcement came out yesterday. But continue.
All right. Well, I'll stand corrected. Thank you. But and that's beside the point. That was my little jab. I have to join in that conservative complaining about the media. But I think the Republicans would be willing to talk about closing some of the loopholes and talking about how to raise additional revenues for the federal government if there was actual serious conversation about real cuts in spending and entitlement reform. Paul Ryan has put out a plan. Some of the presidential candidates have either endorsed it or have come out with some similar plans themselves. And these are real policy discussions on how to get ourselves back in fiscal order while still protecting some of the very sacred cow entitlement programs of the New Deal. That is if anything, Tea Party members maybe should be really upset that the liberal end of the spectrum has moved us to the point where conservatives are defending Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security and trying to show a way to repair them and fix them and make sure that they're going to be around for the next generations. But we haven't seen that kind of serious policy proposal from the White House, from the Senate Democrats, anything like that. They're willing to demagogue and let the Paul Ryans of the world go first, and then just take their head off. So if Senators Murray and Kerry and Baucus are willing to talk about how we can have fundamental entitlement reform and cut some spending that's not necessary, I think you'd see some of the Republicans that are involved with this talk about how we can get rid of some corporate welfare, how we can get rid of some of the loopholes, how we can talk about gaining additional revenues. I mean, one of the biggest beefs I have is somebody like Warren Buffett, who complains that his secretary pays a higher marginal rate in taxes than he does. Well, that's because most of his stuff is probably in tax-free bonds. And if he's all that upset about her paying more in taxes than he does, well, he can always write an additional check to the federal government to pay for the services that he wants to have put in place. So I think it's possible. I think Charles Krauthammer might be a little more optimistic, but he's been around Washington, D.C. a long time and knows the players a lot better than I do. So I would suggest that it's possible, as long as we forget some of the partisan divide, not necessarily ideological divide. I think the problem in Washington, D.C. is not a ideological problem. It's a partisan problem, and it's perfectly fair for them to have different perspectives on what the federal government should be doing. It's a different thing to be just defending yourself because you're a Republican or because you're a Democrat.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is best. It wasn't a heavily reported story, but I remember after Paul Ryan introduced his controversial budget plan, calling for trillions of dollars in federal budget cuts, there was a scene where Bill Clinton, there was a hot mic, they call it, that like Reagan had the "we're bombing Russia in 6 minutes" thing, where it was overheard talking to Paul Ryan, and he said, some of your stuff makes sense, and we've got, but he's whispering this. Something I think he talked about, we've got to talk about the retirement age for Social Security and some things like that, common sense things, but he was whispering this. That's the problem. The politicians can't publicly say just common sense things, that if you're 60 years old, we shouldn't mess with you, deal's a deal. But if you're Emily's age or my age or Brett's age, that if they said, okay, you're going to, we're going to raise your entry level, because when they started Social Security, I think it was a 5 or 6 year life expectancy on the program. Now it's 18 years. When they started it, I think there were 6 workers for every retiree, and now it's the opposite. So we can't just continue on spend. But that's my 2 cents. And then I'm just going to go ahead and go out on the limb here, because Brett was off the line or in the process of calling back due to the horrendous thunderstorm happening in Hawaii when we talked about Facebook. And I'm just going to speak for Brett and say that Brett is, in fact, against inmates having Facebook accounts and preying on kids, as is Emily and as am I.
Go ahead. I think from now on, you just fill in for me the whole time, okay?
I just went on a limb there. I figured you would. But we're out of time. And I want to thank my good friend Brett Herbeck, who is a former vice mayor of Front Royal, Virginia, and perhaps maybe entering the political system again at some point in that area or beyond. You can catch Brett on Google Plus and on Facebook. You can just Google his search for his name in Facebook, or find him on Google Plus. His short URL is gplus.to/Herbeck, H-R-B-E-K, and you'll catch Brett. Also, Emily Williams is the senior political writer for the Lynchburg Times newspaper. You can read all of her great writing at lynchburgtimes.com, and you can catch her on Google Plus as well. Her link is gplus.to/EmilyKW. I want to thank both of you for being on the show tonight. Brett, tearing you away from your vacation. I've been picking on you for an hour, but I'm very jealous. That's the only reason. I wish I were in Hawaii right now streaming. And I wish you all the best and safe journey home. Emily, thank you very much from your Bedford County wonderful new home. And we will be back tomorrow night. Tomorrow night I'll have Emily with me for the McDermott Report, and then Friday it is Google Plus Week with Christina Trapolino and Daniel Bowie from Vancouver. If we can get him on the show, we're hoping to. Hey, thanks so much for watching and for listening. To all of our folks from Justin.tv, from Huffington Post, from Blog Talk Radio, we thank you, and I will see you tomorrow.